Once upon a time in a kingdom far, far away. Once upon a time in the kingdom next door. Once upon a time right now. Once there was a king and a queen. They lived in a prosperous kingdom, and they had everything they could need, of course, being kings and a queen. They had a castle, and they had villas and summer houses, horses and carriages. They had employees and they had servants, nobles, and everyone in this land knew their place and prospered. Anyway, the king and queen prospered. And they believed everyone prospered. They had everything that money could buy, but they did not have what money could not buy. All they longed for was a child. They had tried for years. They had tried everything. Every traveling doctor, every astrologer, every herbalist, every acupuncturist, every person that might help, they invited, not only from their own kingdom, but the kingdoms surrounding their kingdom. And still, they had no child. And they fell into a kind of despair. A kind of despondency. Stuck in a liminal longing that could never be filled. And everything they had could not make them happy. And the queen took to walking at twilight, at the place where the forest and the meadow met, outside of the bounds of the garden, on the edge of the wilderness. Each twilight, she would venture a bit farther, aimlessly walking, carrying her heartache like a ruby, hard and red in her chest. And on one particular evening, one particular twilight, as she walked there, an old woman came in the other direction towards her, or from the other direction towards her. And the queen was a bit nervous, and her heart began to beat a bit faster The woman looked odd somehow, as if she weren't from there. She certainly wasn't from there, from here. And her steps slowed, and her eyes grew smaller, and she waited, not knowing how to react. And the old woman came closer. And the queen observed her movements. They were graceful somehow. For her age, she seemed ancient, but moved lithe and graceful. Each step soft, as if she were in conversation with the earth upon which she walked. And as she came upon the queen and they looked into each other's eyes, something shifted in the heart of the queen. And somehow, unbidden, she trusted this woman. And somehow, in that look, a tear fell from the eyes of the queen. And the old one asked, "What is it that troubles you, my lady? What is it that troubles your heart?" "Oh," said the queen, "oh, it is not worth sharing because there's nothing to be done." "You never know," said the old woman. "I can probably solve it in a trice if you just follow what I tell you." And so the queen told the old one about her longing to have a child. And the years of struggle. And heartache, and trying, and despair. And the old one with the twinkle in her eye said, "That's not a problem. I promise you, if you do as I tell you, all will be well. You are to go home, and tomorrow at dusk do not go for a walk, but draw yourself a bath. You might put rose petals in the water or some kind of oil that smells fragrant, that pleases you. Get into the bath and let the warmth relax your muscles and soften your grief and awaken your longing for a child and awaken your longing for the king. And then, when you are done with your bath, take a cup that has 2 ears, 2 handles, and fill it with the water of the bath, and place it underneath your bed. Then, go to bed with the king and make love, both of you, calling the soul of your child into you. Dreaming this one into being. Inviting them into the nest of your womb. And then, when you are done, bring the cup down to the northwest corner of your garden. pour out the water and turn the cup upside down. At dawn the next morning, when you come down and remove the cup, you will see 2 flowers underneath, a white flower and a red flower. A white flower and a red flower. The white flower you eat if you want to have a boy. The red flower you eat if you want to bring a girl into the world. But whatever you do, don't eat both flowers. Only the one. I promise you, if you do this, you will bring a child into the world. And the queen, thanking the old woman, walked back to the castle, a little lighter than before. Her heart filled once again with hope. Although she dared not hope, she had still a little thrill of hope in her heart. The next evening, when dusk came upon her, instead of going out for a walk, she drew a bath and got in, as the old woman had said. Afterwards, she gathered a cupful into a 2-handled cup and put it under her bed and welcomed the king into her arms and dreamed and called a baby into her womb. She brought the cup down to the northwest corner of the garden without spilling a drop, offered it to the earth, and turned it upside down. And she could barely sleep. She was so excited. What would happen? She didn't quite believe anything would happen, but she was so excited it might happen. And in the morning, at dawn, when the birds began to sing, she put on her robe and flew down the stairs out to the garden and lifted the cup. And there was a white flower and a red flower. And she had no idea what to do. She had no idea which flower to eat. Should she eat the white flower? If she were to bring a boy into the world, he would grow up and at some point would go to the wars and he might be killed and then she would lose him. If she were to eat the red flower, she would raise a girl, a daughter, which would be so dear to her heart, but at some point, too soon, she would marry and be taken off to the castle of another, and she would lose her daughter. And so no matter what she did, even if she were to gain a child, she would lose her child. Finally, she closed her eyes, stretched out her hand, and blindly picked one of the flowers, leaving it to fate or chance. She picked the red one, but she did not know it, and put it into her mouth, and it was so sweet. It tasted like the fulfillment of all of her longing, the healing of all of her tears. And she was suddenly seized by some power, she did not know what, and she opened her eyes and grabbed the other flower, the white flower, and ate it as well, completely forgetting what the old one had said. And truly her belly began to swell. Truly she was pregnant with twins. And so, a little less than 9 months later, when she went into labor, the midwife was called, who, lo and behold, was an ancient old woman who walked with grace and a twinkle in her eye, and looked into the eyes of the queen, and the queen again trusted this one. And as she labored and brought her first child into the world, the midwife was there and caught a strange shaped snake creature. A lindworm was the first baby to arrive out of the queen's womb, and the old one knew in that moment that the queen had eaten both flowers and took the lindworm, brought it over to the window, and threw it out into the forest where it belonged. As the queen's labor continued, she birthed a beautiful baby boy. 10 fingers, 10 toes, beautiful eyes, beautiful nose, a baby child who cried and shrieked, and she wept, this time for joy. And her son grew, and there was laughter in the halls and rooms of the castle. He was a beautiful child, and he grew into a handsome young man. Oh, the stories I could tell you of how loved he was. But never was there word of the lindworm. The prince grew and came of age, of such an age where he began to think about wanting a bride. And so his father gave him 6 white horses and a carriage that he might go courting in the next kingdom. And he set out in his finery and his beauty, and all came to watch him go by, until he arrived at the crossroads. And at the crossroads, there laid across the road, maybe you've seen this before, in the sun, a long 12-foot snake, black, with red stripes and red eyes. And as the prince came to a halt in front of him, the snake opened one eye and then the other, fixing the prince in his stare, fierce, unyielding. Elder brothers marry first, he said. The prince had no idea who this was or what he was talking about, or how a giant 12-foot-long snake could even be speaking to him, and why on earth he would say, elder brothers marry first. And so, without a word, and without understanding what was going on, he turned his carriage and 6 white horses and took another path to the neighboring kingdom. And the people waved as he went by, and he began to feel secure in his princeliness once again, until he came to another crossroads, and there, again, was the snake blocking his path. Again, one eye and then the other opened, and again the snake said to him, elder brothers marry first. More puzzled and consternated than before, the prince tried a third time, this time very much wanting to leave behind this creature, this, dare I say, monster. And so he went a little bit more quickly along the third road to the neighboring kingdom, and as the people waved, he did not this time wave back, but left and went on as quickly as his horses could take him safely in his carriage until he came to the third crossroad, and there laid the monster in wait, this time with both eyes open, facing him, and said, "Elder brothers, marry first." Well, this time the prince turned and hightailed it back to the castle. And he arrived back, went running into his mother and his father, and he said, "Something is going on that I don't understand. 3 times I tried, and 3 times my way was blocked by a monster, a hideous black and red thing with red eyes, who looked at me with fire, breathing fire like a dragon, and he said, 'Elder brothers, marry first.' I don't have a brother. What is going on?" The queen and the king were shocked, disturbed, scared, and completely confounded. The king called all of his advisors together, and when he described the monster, they said to him, "Oh, yes, we've heard stories of such a creature. Oh, yes, he's been seen in the forest." "Why has no one told me of this creature?" asked the king. "Has he harmed anyone?" "Well, there are rumors," says his advisors, "but no proof." Time passed, and the king sent out those to search for this monster, this great black and red snake with the red eyes. But no one could find him. It was as if he had disappeared. And so the prince once again harnessed his 6 white horses and his beautiful golden gilded carriage, and dressed himself in his finery, and took off for the neighboring kingdom, this time the other one, on the other side, just to be safe. Going in a different direction, he went along, and again the people waved as he went by in his finery. Until he came to a crossroads. And at the crossroads, again, the monster waited and looked at him and said to him, "Elder brothers, marry first." The prince tried to reason with him, tried to talk with him. "I don't even know who you are. I don't have a brother. I believe you are mistaken. We've put out a search for you, by the way, and we couldn't find you, so who are you?" The Lindworm did not respond, except to say, "Elder brothers, marry first." Seeing he would get nowhere, returned to the castle. This time the queen had an idea. She would call upon the midwife, the old woman who had made it possible, who had gifted her with her son, and the old woman who'd brought her son into the world. She would know. And so another search was made in the forest, this time for the old one. And she was found and brought to the castle before the king and the queen. And the queen said to her, "My son, who's of a marrying age, has tried to go to the neighboring kingdom, and each time his horses were stopped by a Lindworm, a black and red thing with red eyes, who says only, "Elder brothers marry first." You wouldn't know anything about what he's talking about, would you? The old one looked everywhere except in the eyes of the queen. "Well," she said, "yeah, well, there may have been a small creature that came slithering out of your womb before the prince was born, but I thought nothing of it and threw it out the window." "I told you not to eat both flowers." The queen, had no idea how such a thing might have come out of her womb, had no idea how such a thing got into her womb, had no idea how she, a queen, might have birthed a Lindworm into the world, and was convinced it was some kind of sorcery of the old woman. But the king turned and said to her, "Whatever and however it has happened, it is true that he is the elder brother. And it is therefore true that we must find him a bride." And so once again, messengers were sent out to find the Lindworm and bring him the message that he was welcomed home, and that the king and queen would find him a bride, because indeed elder brothers marry first. And so one day, the Lindworm came slithering back home to the castle. The queen was terrified and horrified and burst into tears. The king was terrified and horrified, but had seen war and knew how to school his face, and so he walked over to his son and welcomed him as his eldest. Everyone else in the castle kept their distance. And rumors went flying about his teeth so sharp and his eyes so red like flame, and the scaly, slimy, cold skin of him, and the hugeness of him, and that he surely had an appetite to eat everyone in the castle if they weren't careful, and so they stayed as far away as possible. Now the king had sent a messenger to the neighboring kingdom, yes, the very same one that his son the prince had tried to get to, with the message that a princess might come and marry his firstborn son. He did not, however, mention that his firstborn son was a Lindworm. And so the night of the wedding arrived, the bride having come and not been allowed to meet her bridegroom until the wedding itself, which was held in the evening in the hopes that the darkness might hide some of the monstrosity of her groom-to-be. The wedding evening evening arrived, and it was a solemn and short affair, and they were brought to the bridal chamber, the bride and her groom. And he said to her, "Take off your dress." And she did, and he swallowed her up. And in the morning there was only the Lindworm curled on the bed. The king sent another messenger to the other kingdom on the other side of the mountains, the second one that the prince had been trying to get to, again asking a princess to come and marry his firstborn son, again not mentioning his firstborn son as being a 12-foot black and red snake. And once again, the princess was welcomed, but did not meet her bridegroom until the night of the wedding. And again, when they were brought into the bridal chamber, and the snake said to her, "Take off your dress," and she did, she too was eaten up. And in the morning, there was only a snake curled on the bed. Well, word got out as word does, and so every other letter that the king tried to send to any other kingdom, he got a no. They would not be sending their daughters to marry the firstborn son. And the king, not knowing what to do, his beloved son, the prince, still not married, his elder son, the Lindworm, also still not married, and him having a propensity to eat whoever he was married to, he decided to go and visit his shepherd. He knew that his shepherd had a daughter. He'd seen her with the flock of sheep. And he decided he would invite the shepherd, well, he would tell the shepherd that his daughter was chosen to marry the eldest son. When he arrived, the shepherd's daughter was out with the sheep, and the shepherd was home repairing the barn and the sheep where the sheep lived, and tending to the yard. And the king spoke and told his shepherd that his daughter was required. And the shepherd, whose wife, the mother of his daughter, died in childbirth, wept, because he knew he could not say no to the king. But he also knew that he would be losing his daughter. Not only because she'd be leaving home, but because she too would be eaten. The king promised the shepherd that he would be handsomely rewarded, given gold and fine clothes, and that he could come and visit his daughter anytime. And he said he would be back in 3 days to pick up the girl. That evening over supper, the shepherd told his daughter what the king had said, and they fell into each other's arms and wept. They both knew it was goodbye. And the next day, at dawn, she went out for a walk through the forest to her mother's grave. And as she sat at the grave and wept, as if each step were a conversation with earth, and a twinkle in her eye, came to the girl and asked her, "What ails you, my child? Why do you weep?" And the girl said, "It's no use, it can't be changed. My life is over." And the old one said to her, "Who knows? It could be solved in a trice if you just listen to me and do what I say. Now tell me, what is the problem?" And the girl explained she was to be carried away in 2 days' time and brought to the castle to marry the eldest son, and she knew that she also would be eaten. And the old woman said to her, "Here is what you must do. When you arrive at the castle, you must say that you will not marry until you have 10 shifts, 10 underdresses under your bridal dress. And you must request, yea, demand, a bath of lye, and a bath of milk, and 2 copper wire brushes to be placed in the bridal suite. And when you are married and you return to the bridal chamber, when your husband says to you to remove a dress, you must tell him to remove a skin. And every single time he says to you to remove a dress, you must say to him, he must remove a skin. Until there are no more dresses and no more skins to be removed. And then you must put him into the bath of lye and scrub him with the copper brushes. And he will scream, and he will wail, and he will beg you. But you may not stop. You may not stop until the shape-shifting is complete, until his form has found itself anew, until he is a human. And then you are to put his red and wounded body into the bath of milk. And you are to caress him, and you are to sing to him. And then, once you have done so, you are to carry him, bring him to your bed, and you are to make love with him. And then you will not die, at least not that night. And you will have a husband that you might love. And that will most certainly love you. And in 2 days' time, the girl was brought in carriage and horse to the palace, to the castle, and did exactly as the old one had said. And the night of the wedding arrived, and in came her bridegroom, and she was terrified by his size and by his fierceness, those eyes that seemed to burn like fire. But she knew what she was to do, and so she said, "I do," and she went into the bridal chamber with him. And when he said to her, "Remove your dress," she said, "I will, but only if you remove a skin." "No one has ever dared ask me that before," he said. "And no one has ever told me to remove my dress," she said, and they looked into each other's eyes, matched in their fierceness and their will. And slowly, the Lindworm began to wriggle and writhe and scrape and slither until he had removed a skin, and she removed her dress. And again he said to her, "Now remove your dress," and she said, "And you remove another skin, and this happened again and again and again and again, 10 times. Until she stood there in her last shift, and he lay there in a pile. And she scooped up this mass of creature and put him into the lye bath. And she took the 2 copper wire brushes and began to scrub. And he screamed. And he writhed. And he yelled. And he sobbed. And she continued, scrubbing and scraping him. On and on, her own tears falling into the lye bath as he cried out in pain. She wept. Until truly he had shape-shifted into a man. Pink, red, scrubbed and scratched. And she lifted him. He weighed almost nothing in his weakness. She lifted him into the bath of milk. And she began to stroke him and caress him. And she began to kiss his skin, and she began to sing. And she stayed like that, they stayed like that for a long while. Until slowly the skin of this one healed. The bloody scrapes and scratches healed. Until the skin was smooth and soft and free of scars. Then he opened his eyes, and they looked into each other's eyes. And she held out her hand, and he took it, and they walked together tenderly to the bed where they made love. Slept. The king and the queen crept to the door and cracked it open and looked in. And this time there was not a great black snake alone, asleep on the bed, but 2 humans, entwined in each other's arms, sleeping. And so the younger brother, too, could marry. And he became king of the castle, the younger brother, the older one having lived in the forest his whole life. And his bride, having grown up a shepherd with the sheep in the meadows and the forests of the hills. They were happier outside of the castle walls. And so there was a home, a simple home built for them. where they lived till the end of their days, and every summer the children of the younger brother would come and stay with them and learn the ways of the forest. There are, of course, so many stories to tell. Songs to sing, ballads, knowledge and wisdom that was passed down from those two of the forest. But that's for another time. For now, my tale is done. In these few moments of silence now, just letting the story, like a bundle, be held in your heart. The echo of it. And notice what images or feelings are most alive for you. What has touched you. Or stirred you, or upset you, or confounded you.